What is up, everybody? Welcome to the Right Mindset. I'm Thomas J. Bellezza, and today we are going to have some fun. That's right. We, as always, will be trying to do what we do, and we're going to educate you. We're going to talk through the process, but more importantly, today's going to be magic. Today is about rewriting the greats, but in a way to show you the author voice in all of us, and how that every story is unique. Plots could be the same. There's only really seven plots you can tell in the story. Between the monster, the journey, hero's quest, all these other things, right? But like last time when we rewrote R.R. Martin's Game of Thrones, which you can look at the old video, today we are going to focus on The Way of Kings, Brandon Sanderson. We're going to look at his fine first chapter, Storm Blessed, and we are going to take a little look-see at what he wrote. And then what we're going to do is I'm going to rewrite it using my voice to show you that the way we approach things doesn't make it good or bad. It's just a choice. And every little choice we make is a part of defining who we are as an author in itself. Our voice is how we write and what we write. 2 p.m. Yeah, we're here today. We're happening now. Woohoo! Evening. Hello, everyone. Hello. Yes, let's give it a minute or two before we get into the bulk of it. Since it is a live event, I'll set up the screen so you can see what we'll be talking about today. Bloop, 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 bloop. Like I said, and as you can see, my camera's looking a little bit better this time. Let me see if I can get a little bit better white balance here. What do we got here? Is that a little bit? Yeah, I like that. Yeah, look at that. All right. So, welcome, Flowers. Welcome to the show. Welcome, Winters. Welcome to the show. We're going to wait so we can get a couple more people in the room because I know a lot of people like to walk through the process with me. Now, if you're writing a novel now, or you've written a novel, or as Brandon Sanderson has wisely said, you're a new author if you've only written between 1 and 6 books, right? The first 6 books will help you determine many things, your voice being one of them. Doesn't mean you're a bad writer because you're writing your first to 6th book. Doesn't mean, oh, I'm a new writer. That's devaluing. Listen, when we all learn how to ride a bike, it's not that we suck at riding bikes. We don't know how to ride a bike when we sit on it for the first time. But you have training wheels. You have to learn how to balance beforehand. Eventually, you'll be doing wheelies and riding with no hands. The thing is, if you've been riding a bike for 20 years and you're still falling off, then yes, you suck at riding a bike. But here at The Right Mindset, we talk about how we develop over the process and that it is all about failing to succeed. So when I say new author, let's look at it in a positive way. But Brandon Sanderson's right. The first 6 books is really your journey to discover who you are. And as you can see, Brandon Sanderson has a very unique voice, right? It's something that he worked to. In fact, for free on his website, you can download the Way of Kings Prime. This is before you did the real work. Remember, we talk about that on this channel. Writing is easy, but being a writer takes work. This is all great writing is rewriting. And Way of Kings Prime is a real amazing example of what he did before he rewrote it and reworked it and started kind of analyzing, because that's really what being a writer is asking questions. Why are they doing this? What's working here? What's not working, right? But more importantly, this is a quote-unquote final draft that was published. This is the first chapter of Way of Kings, Storm Blessed. We're only working on the first page. We're not even going to go all the way down. We're probably only going to touch on the first couple of passages. But what is the point of today for anyone who's really just jumping in? It's to show you that all plots are the same, but all stories are unique. And why do I say that? Because every single time this channel decides that a narrative is based on 2 things, story and plot. Story is what needs to happen no matter what. And plot. Plot is what needs to happen no matter what. And story is how it unfolds through the emotional experiences and choices of your characters. So the story is really going to control your voice, right? Plot is they got to meet. Plot is they get together. Plot is they fight the dragon. Plot is, right? There's no voice in plot, okay? Maybe you're telling, it's a love story, or it's an adventure story, or they got to get rid of the ring, right? That's not really going to decide your voice. But the way it all unfolds, that That's where your voice truly begins to shine. The story, making choices, the words, how you see the world through the character, and then how you present it on the page. Okay, so we got some people here. Let's jump into it. Sorry about that big pop. For the couple people that just jumped in, we are going to be looking at Brandon Sanderson's Stormblessed, and then we are going to take it to the next step. We're going to look at his voice a little bit, and then I'm going to rewrite it in my voice to show you that you, as a writer, can do this as an exercise to see how your voice differs from other authors, but not to say, hey, can I compare? But to prove to yourself that you do indeed have a voice. It's all about how you look at things. Obviously, if you have questions about what I'm doing, or you have questions about your own voice, please ask them in the comments. I will answer them. I'm here more for you than I am to just be like, here's a thing. All right. So we all need to eat, sleep, and use the toilet. That is our plot. Correct. Everything else is our story. That's right. How we use the toilet, how we eat, what we eat, those are all story. Never really thought about life like that before. And that's a really nice way to look at it, is that we do all need to eat, sleep, and use the toilet. But again, some of us choose a bidet, and that is a choice, which creates story, which is character, right? Some people go, you know what? I'll do anything. I will kill for a taco. And other people will be like, I will kill for pizza. All right. Give me my pizza. Give me some cheese. Give me some sauce, and I'm happy, right? Okay. My chair is fixed. My chair is ready. The cat is asleep. Let's do it. Yeah. It's all fun and games until you sit on the bidet and it changes your life. All right. Let's do this. So looking right off the bat, let me just read this. I'm just going to read this much. I'm just going to read right here, and then we'll talk about it, okay? I'm going to die, aren't I? Sen asked. The weathered veteran beside Sen turned and expected him. The veteran wore a full beard cut short at the sides. The black hairs were starting to give way to gray. I'm going to die, Sen thought, clutching his spear, the shaft slick with sweat. I'm going to die. Oh, Stormfather, I'm going to die. How old are you, son? The veteran asked. Sen didn't remember the man's name. He was hard to recall anything while watching that other army form lines across the rocky battlefield. That lined up seemed to civil. Neat, organized, short spears in the front ranks, long spears and javelins next, archers at the sides. The dark-eyed spearmen wore equipment like Shen's, leather jerking and knee-length skirt with a simple steel cap and a matching breastplate. All right, so just a heads up, the chat screen pop-up covers. Yeah. I'm okay. I'm not that pretty. No one's coming for my face. You know what I'm saying? I'm not the pretty tech. Anyway, all right. So, but I do appreciate that. All right, let's talk about it. So, there's a couple of things that my voice wouldn't do. So keep that in mind. We are going to talk about that as well. But let's look at Brandon Sanderson's voice. Okay. First of all, I love that he starts off with dialogue. I know Flowers likes that because maybe or maybe not. Her book starts off with some dialogue, right? All right. But I will say this. The weathered veteran beside Shen turned and inspected him. This is a very physical observation, right? And then the veteran wore a full beard cut short. This becomes very descriptive, okay? Now, we've talked about this a lot on these videos about logical narrative movement. To me, and by the way, this is not a judgment on what's right and what's wrong. This is not what's good or bad. Again, I'm just going to work through how author voice is presented. I personally wouldn't have gone this way because this is a stop the narrative movement and describe something, right? It is the weathered veteran beside Shen turned and inspected him. And then the veteran wore a full beard cut short. And then it continues on. At the sides, the black hairs were starting to give way to the gray, right? This is what we call, this is just, and by the way, this isn't bad. It's just that this is narrative. This is description in my mind for description's sake. It's not moving through the experience of the characters or, remember, every line should move the plot forward, character, or world building. It could be any variation of that. And that makes each line have value so you can afford your word count. You're not really fiddle-faddling. But that doesn't mean what happened here is wrong. Another thing here is, do you see how he's choosing to allow thought, the italicize, to be present? Some authors won't do thought. They would actually do more like this. It was hard to recall. It was hard to recall anything while watching the other army form. So this is internalized. So this is more geared towards the kind of internalization I like, and that I would use in a novel. And the reason is it's still thought, but to me, this is processing. This is telling, really good. It's emotional telling. It's good. This is a good, strong moment. But when I approach books, I know I'm not going to do that necessarily, right? But that is a part of a voice, right? Part of your brand, part of your style. Also, Shen thought. Now, this is just because we want to know that it is Sen doing that, right? So it's just a clarifier. And that's another thing that makes Brandon Sanderson's writing very uniquely his. He makes it not only immersive in the sense, and he loves his world building, but he makes it generally accessible to everybody. So whether you're reading, whether you're an avid reader or someone who's sort of getting into reading, if you're an adult, if you're a young adult, middle grade, whatever the case may be, you could read his books and you're not going to necessarily get confused. He's going to keep you in the moment and keep the moment going. But again, author voices change. Some authors, I definitely would not do that. I like to kind of like move it cinematically. But that doesn't mean this is bad. So keep that in mind when you're writing. Your choices don't make you necessarily a bad author, right? It's just a choice. And some people are going to like red and some people are going to like blue. Okay. And in this example, I'm not saying this took me out of the book because I don't like it. Like, I don't like when it says thought or when we do italicize, right? If it was in first person, we wouldn't even have to italicize. It's just through the note. But it's just a choice. This is a Brandon Sanderson author voice choice. Okay. Clutching a spear is physical representation. So this is good showing. The shaft slick with sweat. That's immersive, tactile, right? And then we go back into his head. Another thing that's really important to know is we're looking at this as one narrative movement. That's why that's how you should look at your passages, your prose, is a narrative movement. So right now we're in his head, and while he's in his head, he's physically reacting to this fear, this worry, this concern, and then of course the narrative movement breaks into somebody interrupting him. How old are you, son? The veteran asked. Sen didn't remember the man's name. This is to me, I think that should be like this, though, honestly, but it's not. So this goes right into the internal processing of Shen. And again, like I said, this is probably more towards my liking. I like this kind of exposition. To me, this is what I call character exposition. This is learning stuff through the experience and choices of your characters, either through dialogue or how they're processing things. So instead of stopping the story and going across from them, the army had spears and javelins similar to Shen. Instead of doing that, it's allowing us to experience this information through what the character is processing, which then it was hard to recall anything. Why? Well, the cause and effect is he's watching the other army form lines across the rocky battlefield. This is great tension building. That lining up seems so civil, neat, organized. Short spears in the front ranks, long spears and javelins next, archers at the sides. The dark-eyed spearmen wore equipment like Shen's. Right? These are all things he is paying attention to. And this is something, as authors, you should think about as well. What you're describing, right, especially when it's visually descriptive, is what a character should be looking at, not necessarily what you want the audience to know. And if you say to yourself, but Thomas, I need the audience to know this thing, then it has to come through the character, and the characters themselves would make the choice to take note to those things. But as you can see, this description on the screen right now, this is moving the plot forward, and we are learning character, and it is world building. We're all doing all that heavy lifting in one passage in a really strong way, and it's characterized through the story. To me, this This here is not story to me. This is just plot. We need to know that the character has a full beard and he has some gray showing, right? I would probably include that another way, like the physical description of a character or whatever the case may be, right? So one thing that you should think about is when you're taking because when you're just practicing writing and stuff like that, what's good about this exercise is it's not about taking on the style, it's about approaching the scenes. I should say it's not about taking on the style of the author, it's about approaching scenes in your eye, like the way you would approach a scenes. And this exercise is basically a way to expand your presentation, your voice, your approach, so keep that in mind. By the way, before I get started on doing my sample, which I'm going to do next, does anyone have any questions on what I basically just said, what I was talking about? Do you need any clarification, etc., 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 etc.? Anytime, you know me, I like answering questions whenever possible. Yeah, because what's life without answers? All right. Questions. Okay. I'm going to move forward, but if a question comes in your mind, just please ask. You're not interrupting me. These are for you. These videos are for you. They're it's not for me to be like, look at me and watch me write. It's I'm here to help you understand or clarify things. All right. With that said, if you're just jumping in now and you don't know what's going on, I'm showing people how to present their author voice, how to look at author voice in other authors. A quick summary. The way he pauses the narrative to describe somebody, that is an author voice choice. The way he plays with thoughts and ideas within a character's head, that's author choice. The way that he processes the information instead of it being described or performed in exposition is an author choice. All right. I like to, again, move through characters, and I'm less exposition. I do like Brandon Sanderson's style. I just think sometimes it's too accessible, which would be send thought or, things like that. But let's see. How would the Thomas approach this? By the way, I'd love for you to tell me how you'd approach this as well. So feel free in the comments to maybe write out the first beat. What is your first line you'd write? How would you recontextualize this beat in your voice? Feel free to piddle paddle it into the tittle tattle the buttons and join in the fun. So I'm gonna walk through the process here. I'm gonna die, aren't I? Shen asked. All right. Okay. Be honest, I really like that first line. You can't really. You can't. Aren't I? Shen asked. However, I'm going to make an adjustment here, right? So instead of saying that Shen asked, I'm going to die, aren't I? Sen shook in the presence of his fellow soldiers. Right? Now, by the way, this is a first draft. So again, when you're writing, everything is first draft based, and then you're going to see that I'm going to go back and I'm going to adjust and clean, right? So right off I wouldn't do this in real time if I was writing a book where like I'm editing in real time. But as an example, or working here in real time, I want you to see the process. Okay, so aren't you? Sen shook his armor tight around his thin chest. Presence of his soldiers. Pushed at his position. All right. Now, the reason I'm doing that is because I'm establishing that there are people there. So that's what I'm doing. I'm building the scene. And that's what I like to do. I look at moments like a camera shot because I do come from film and television. That's where my writing career really kind of started, was film and television. So I like to build a shot. And to me, I'm gonna die, Shen, right? So this might be the close up, and then I sort of build into the camera shot. Shen shook his armor tight, so we're on him. The presence of his fellow soldiers pushed at his position. Position, right? So now I'm sort of like pulling the camera back a little bit, and now we can get to right the weather veteran beside him turned and expecting. All right. So then we could, or the presence of pushed on his position. I forget what his name is, but so all right, here's something. So instead of going the weather veteran beside Shen turned and expected him, and then describing the veteran, the way I would approach it, and by the way, again, none of this means one way is better than the other. I'm just showing you author voices and author choices and why I'm making choices to show you how I'm processing it. Just so when you're looking at your work, these aren't necessarily things you think about with every single line, but as you're developing your voice, this is technically part of the process because what do you like? You know, how do you like to see things play out? How do you like to play with characters? How do you like moments to evolve? And to me, I like description through movement. And what that means is the weathered veteran, right? So let's say we start with beside Shen. I'm just writing what's there right now and inspect, right? So the way I would look at this moment is all right. All right. The weather. All right. So let's get why don't we say uh the weather veteran. All right. Let's see. Because I want to get in the physical turn and inspected him. His eyes dark against his graying beard. Gray. I think gray is supposed to be A, isn't it? Graying beard. Okay. His eyes dark against his graying beard. Okay, so the weather veteran, I probably wouldn't say beside, but I would just say. Oh, again, this would be an example of why his stuff is so accessible because we are not. There's no ambiguity. The weather veteran beside Shen, so we're getting position and spatial information. Turned and inspected him, so we know who that is right off the bat, right? However, again, I don't really care about that in the grand scheme of things because if Shen shook his armor tight around his thin chest, the presence of his fellow soldiers pushed at his position, I'm already informing the reader that there are soldiers around him and Shen is the one experiencing it. So the weather veteran beside him turned, right? And then his eyes dark against his brown beard as he inspected him. Or I would say Shen here, right? So. Now, the reason I'm just choosing this is because I'm trying, by the way, when I do these exercises, I'm trying to get the information or beats there. I'm trying to keep the same rhythm and the same scene, the plot, I'm trying to keep the plot there, the movement of the plot. But at the same time, I'm trying to develop it in a sense of how I would ultimately want to see it play out in my head, right? So the weathered veteran beside him, which keeps it in Shen's POV, by the way. Okay, because he's the one who's aware of the veteran beside him. Turned his eyes, his eyes. I think this would be dark against his graying beard. Turned his eyes. Turned his to him. Maybe the weather veteran. Actually, veteran. Turned to him. Right. His eyes dark against his graying beard as he inspected Shen. All right, the weathered veteran. I guess it could be beside him. Turned to him. Beside him, turned. Oh, now we could do this. Okay, turned. Inspecting him. His eyes dark against the graying beard. All right, let's add some more stuff. I'm just cleaning some things up here because I can't spell. I like to double check things. All right, at his side, black beard starting his full beard, cut short at the sides. The black hairs were starting to gray. Okay. Any questions? Remember, please ask, just to understand sort of like how I am showing you my process or how I'm showing you to pull out my voice and how to change things. And by the way, it's not an instant thing. Like when you're writing, part of your voice is going to develop in stages. Like there is the zero draft, which should look like, they met and they kissed, right? But at the same time, you're going to have your first, second, third, fourth. Your voice really starts shining in your third and fourth draft. Don't panic. I'm here. Hello, Emma. Making pizza and you had me at pizza, and I think you're my weakness. We talk. It's like you were here in the beginning. I was talking about how we'd kill for pizza. All right. So the weather veteran, this beside him is the part that's killing me. This is killing me. I don't like the beside him, just for me, right? Turned to him. Ooh. I just also don't like the way that looks. Anyway, it'd be like this to start. Okay. I'm going to die, aren't I? Shen shook in his armor, tight around his chest. The presence of his fellow soldiers pushed at his position. The weather veteran beside him turned and inspected Shen. His eyes dark against his graying beard. This is judgment. Oh, what do we got? Oh, pizza. Can you hear the dogs outside? Oh, there's a lot of puppies. Anyway, his eyes dark against his graying beard as he judged. All right. Actually, we wouldn't be able to say judged because, again, this is supposed to be some Shen's POV. So this is also something to keep in mind. If I was writing first draft, I probably would have just left that and just kept writing because I don't have to clean that up. But as you're going through to kind of fix POVs and to keep it very within a POV, you got to change the framing of things. For example, we wouldn't know what the soldier was thinking. So what we can do, his judging eyes dark against his graying beard. All right, so there we go. I could even do this. I could even just make a nice long sentence, right? His judging eyes dark against his graying beard. And of course, like grammar, all that stuff, I would have to check later. Anyway. All right, so now, in this situation, how do we represent this, right? This is a nice moment to kind of think about us as authors individually, because Brandon wanted to sort of bring in this tension and build the fear that's going on with Shen and to kind of pull you into what he's experiencing, right? I like to sort of be more external unless I'm processing information and not necessarily have characters think inside their head, like with straight dialogue. So I might allow this to be a little bit more physical, right? I might start off with clutching his spear, the shaft. By the way, M dash. Oh, that's a smiley. There's a code on the keyboard that allows you to do the M dash, and every time I hit it when I do live, for some reason it turns into a smiley face. Anyway, the M dash. You know how people say, "Oh, M dashes are bad. Don't use M dashes." This is literally 3 passages into his first chapter, and there's an M dash. Like, don't listen to people. You know what I'm saying? Also, they say M dashes. Oh, that's a sign of AI. AI helped you write your book. No, M dashes are a part of literature. as are these little things, these semicolons and colons. Like, you write your book and you enjoy it. You know what I'm saying? Like, people, oh God, I hate that. It's also like, oh, don't use the same word in every sentence. Well, here's the. That's two thes in a second. You know, technically there's a third because he just added at the sides to break it up. Like, don't listen to people when they're like, oh, you can't use two periods, an ellipsis. No, that's bad. Like, it was whatever. The shaft slick with sweat. So let's start there. That's probably how I would approach this beat. All right, clutching a spear, the shaft slick with sweat. Shen narrowed his study. Study of the men across the field. Right. All right. All right. So clutching a spear, right? The shaft slick with a sweat. So how would I represent this physically is what I'm trying to do, right? I'm trying to go, I'm going to die, right? So I go, the men across the, yeah. The spear slipped from his worry, grabbing it, trying to reclaim his stance. So now, hey, Elflower. All right. So the next thing I would do is I'm going to bring this in, but now I'm going to add the emotion, right? So now he stuttered in his quiet. Actually, now I could change this. So, because I changed the rhythm, because he stuttered in his quiet fear. Narrowing. What? Oh, yeah. Narrowing the study of the men across the field. Now I can do this. Boom, boom. The spear slipped from his worry. Now I could do this. Now, as you can see, as I add, you got to kind of change the movements. So I like to adjust the movement as I go. Hello, how are you? Okay. So clutching a spear, the shaft slick with sweat. I'm going to die. He stuttered. There we go. All great writers have great editors. I can't spell. Dyslexia. I'll claim it. All right. He stuttered in his quiet fear, narrowing his study of the men across the field. I should say his spear, so it maintains his POV. His spear slipped from his worry. He grabbed at it, trying to reclaim his stance. Right? O storm, father. His words weak lips. Actually, I should say I don't have to say he said, because we already have he stuttered his words weak from his lips. Okay, there you go. All right. So a couple things to notice. Obviously, the way I write is a little bit more expansive. Brandon was able to put all this sort of concisely into a quick beat, quick movement. His pacing in this moment, because remember, pacing is the speed at which information is presented to you. Hey, Hannah Hart, thanks for stopping by. I really appreciate it. Welcome to the party. So Brandon Sanderson is his pacing, because pacing is the speed at which information is presented, is faster here, and it's concise. He's taking out what some might consider fluff. He's not really going into the moment. which is a part of my author voice. So remember, when you're writing, your choices will determine the representation of your author voice. I like to sit in moments a little longer. I like to play with character experiences. I like to see characters reacting to the cause and effect of their environment. There is no wrong or right way to do this. His way isn't better or worse. My way is for sure not better or worse, right? And this is also a first draft of me trying to work through the idea, right? Because I'm just showing you that the way we approach a plot, because remember, this is plot, like what behind the scenes is plot, but how this plays out in these word choices is Brandon Sanderson telling his story. Whereas if I'm telling the same story here, right, with this, I'm allowing it to breathe a little bit more through the characters. I've watched his writing lectures the last 3 Fridays. Oh yeah, absolutely. He's re-released. He's releasing a new lecture series. If anyone hasn't seen it, it's been pretty good. The only thing I get a little upset with is that it seems more broad, his information, and he's so smart and filled with so much like writing knowledge that I just wish he sort of break down the process a little bit more. He kind of did in the last video. He was talking about how he outlines where he goes, I think of I'll go character 1, character 2, and I think what is their long form character arc, which is sort of what we talk about here. And then he goes, and then I think of the narrative arc or the main plot arc. Very, very smart guy. Very smart guy. I just wish he'd go into the process a little bit. But as an aside, sorry. But going back to this, so yeah, my first beat is a little longer, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. Okay. Some people like to do that. Where I would speed up my pacing is when the action, and not, by the way, when I say action, I don't mean like everyone's fighting, but when the action, when things start moving, when we can step out of the internal quote unquote movement. What we got? Could I start my story from Act 2 as my Act 1? So this is a really great question. And to answer it straightforwardly, the answer is yes. But then Act 2 becomes Act 1, and that's the beginning of your story. However, before you say anything, you can do what's known as a flash forward. So if Act 2 sort of is like the backstory or the lead up, right? If that makes sense. And then you're like, all right, now where would we be in Act 1? It would be like doing a Quentin Tarantino kind of thing where he starts at the end and then you kind of move to the middle and then like you kind of mix around. Because ultimately is the narrative moving in the same sense? Because if it is, then you are traditionally still in the first, second, third act story structure. But the layman's version is, could I start my story from Act 2 as my Act 1? If you choose to do that, what that ultimately does is it makes your Act 2 and Act 1. It should be setting up. But Act 2 has a very specific job, just as Act 1 does and Act 3. If you follow the 4-act or the 6-act or the 9-act structure, again, each act would have its own job. So that is something to think about when you're approaching it. You know, is the beginning of your narrative fulfilling the necessary detail to build the stakes in the preceding act? Or, you know what I'm saying? Like, you have to establish things in the beginning of your narrative, right? Whether you're starting at the end, like with the flash forward, if you're starting at the end, you still need to establish enough status quo to challenge and elevate the stakes of their situation in the proceeding. And then, of course, it should all pay off by your third act. I hope that answers your question. All right. So with that said, where are we at? 40 minutes? Okay. So again, if we thanks. I asked that question because I have a hard time writing Act 2 for my story, and Act 2 is like a flashback of what happens in my story. But that's a good way to think as a writer, because you're saying, if you're having trouble with your Act 2, let me make it my Act 1 so I could kind of give it the same love. You know what I'm saying? So maybe if you started with your act 2 just to sort of build it up and then maybe kind of work from there, that might help. It's always good to try things. It doesn't mean you have to keep it that way. But act 2 is like a flashback of what happens in my story. It really depends on how, like, you allow it to move from act 1 to act 2 for it to be a strong flashback. Because again, you don't want it to just be like, "I need people to know this information." Because act 2, in its essence, needs to elevate the stakes, the tension, and then challenge the characters in a way that, showcases everything that you presented in the first act. You have to be able to challenge that. Um but I do know people suffer from the saggy middle syndrome, which is basically they get to the second act and it's just sort of like, where are we going with this? Where are we going with this? Um, if you watch my 27 plot point outline templates, like I do videos on outlining, you'll see that the plot points move in a way where it's creating a flow, like an ebb and flow, and a roller coaster, one might say. It sets up, challenges, then resolves. Sets up, challenges, and resolves. But it's always should be getting slightly higher and higher until it reaches the midpoint, and then it's still doing the up and down, but it's going lower and lower because you technically should never go higher in insanity than the midpoint conflict, because after the midpoint conflict, you're trying to find a solution to what's going on because of the midpoint conflict. Sorry, I love talking about the structure and stuff like that. Anyway, where are we? Okay. So let's see how I'm gonna just read this real quick and then I'm gonna read mine, and let's see how the movement compares, right? I'm going to die, aren't I? Sen asked. The weathered veteran beside Sen turned and inspected him. The veteran wore a full beard, cut short. At the sides, the black hairs were starting to give way to gray. I'm going to die, Sen thought, clutching his spear, the shaft slick with sweat. I'm going to die. Oh, Stormfather, I'm going to die. All right, so now let's read this version of that moment. I'm going to die, aren't I? Sen shook in his armor tight around his thin chest. The presence of his fellow soldiers pushed at his position. The weathered veteran beside him turned and inspected Chen, his judging eyes dark against his graying beard. Clutching his spear, the shaft slick with sweat. I'm going to die, he stuttered in his quiet fear, narrowing his study of the men across the field. His spear slipped from his worry. He grabbed at it, trying to reclaim his stance. I'm going to die. Oh, Stormfather, His words weak from his lips. So, the tension is still there. The fear is still there. It's just, in a sense, I give it a little bit more time to breathe. And again, it doesn't mean it's better or worse. It doesn't mean, you got to breathe in moments. It means that Brandon Sanderson has a really nice, steady pace. This is a really quick pace, but then we kind of gets like, as it obviously, it gets a little slower, which is good. But his opening is like right to the point. I like to, as you see, Sen shook in his armor tight around his thin chest. I'm already starting to create descriptive elements through the narrative movement of the character's experience instead of me, I don't know, saying, Shen asked and then being like, Shen had, he was muscular but thin at the same time, which is ultimately what this is. The veteran wore a full beard, cut short at the sides. Black hairs were starting to give way to gray. Like, there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just saying I like to place descriptors through the movement of the character or the scene. To me, this for me, my author voice is like, this stops the narrative to describe something and it becomes description for description's sake. I don't even think Sen is processing the visual representation of the character. And that is why I did it this way. The weathered veteran beside him turned and inspected Sen. So Sen is aware that he's being inspected. And what is he noticing about the inspection of the veteran? His judging eyes dark against his graying beard. So he can see, I'm processing Sen's experience of the veteran looking at him. And I just add a little bit more emotional truth to it. It doesn't mean what Brandon did He's like, "Ah, it sucks." That's not what this means. It just means it's an approach to how your author voice is represented and presented on the page, and that's definitely something to think about when you write. What do you think, Emma? Emma Bennett, by the way, if you haven't already, subscribe to her channel. She is a developmental editor, as I am. She an author, as I am. She amazing soul too. Her mind is fantastic, and also she's British. So and she brought some pizza and brownies. So we can't say we don't love some pizza and brownies. So Emma, if you're still in the room, I'd love to get your thoughts on that. What, do you agree? Disagree? Do I sound crazy? That's really the question. All right. With that said, we did 45 minutes. I showed you how I approach it a little differently. I always give the floor to the audience, that is you, at the end. So here's 15 minutes of question time. Throw some questions at me. If you have questions about author voice, that would probably be most prudent because that is sort of what the subject is. But if you have questions about anything else, that is not an issue. Give it to me. Let's see if I can help you with a situation. You'll be getting information and advice from, like I said, a developmental editor. For anyone who doesn't know, feel free, absolutely, to like, comment, and share on this video. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you like what you've been seeing, and you're like, hey, I really like this guy. He's funny. He's got a nice beard. I'm going to hit the subscribe button. It would mean a lot to me. I'd be like, hey, thanks. This means a lot to me. Also, I don't know. I'm kind of funny sometimes. I make stupid jokes. All my jokes are stupid. That's every joke I make is stupid. And that's the point. You got to laugh in life, right? I'm just trying to keep the conversation going until somebody asks a question. Feel free. Oh, if you don't have questions, what do you guys work? Tell me what everyone's working on. Are you working on a novel? Are you publishing a novel? Are you outlining? What are you doing? Well, I know some people like Flower out there. She's got stuff going on. My damn chair keeps... It's about time to get a new chair, Thomas. Yeah. By the way, if you notice, I fixed the camera a little bit. It doesn't look like I have a filter on my face. That was annoying me. Okay. If you're just showing up now, hello, welcome, welcome. We're going over author voice and how to represent your author voice and choices and all these things. I recommend going back and watching the video. I talk through and I break through it. But right now, we are on the question and answer part where I answer questions about writing, anything to do with anything from outlining to authors to prose to etc. etc. What we got here? Hannah Hart is still outlining my Your Enchanted Love Belongs With Me story. Nice. Can't go wrong with a nice outline. You know what I'm saying? I used to, fun story, if you haven't heard already. I was never an outline. I was always like, I have to write from the hip. And then I got hired to write a screenplay for someone, a film. And they were like, hey, can you send me the outline first before we move forward so we could agree on the story? They paid me for the outline, but I was like, an outline? Then I had to do a little look-see, study it a little bit, and you realize outlining changed the way I approached it. I'd be honest, it was life-altering. Finished my first splurge of a chapter for a group collaboration. Oh, group! Tell me more about that. We'd love to support that. That's very cool. So was it like a they came up with a scene and then everybody kind of wrote their own version of the scene? Did everyone write out like an outline and you're kind of writing your own version of the story? Like I kind of actually love to hear. I tried writing a book with somebody a couple times where like we had like a document on like Google Docs, whatever. And like it would be like I wrote a line, then they wrote a line, I wrote a line, they wrote a line, right? But you know, life gets busy, so then it kind of gets off. And then it's always been easier to write like film and television with people because you know you have your writers, you know, the writing table, and you know. But a book sometimes gets a little hard. It's a Facebook community. It's a vampire wedding. 8 of us are writing a chapter each. Novella length. That's actually really cool. That's right. Vampire wedding. Listen, I know you like the vampires. Nothing wrong with a vampire. They may suck, but they don't suck, if you know what I mean. You know what I'm saying? It's a bloody good time. really like you really you got to take a bite out of the amazing lore of vampires. Um, Otherwise, if you don't like vampires, you missed out on good stories. Oh my god. One, two, ah. Um, I will say this though, that is that's really a good idea. So when you approach that, is it based off an outline, or is like everyone just randomly writing a chapter where they're like, there's a vampire. Do what you want. I did a Shakespeare play once. Two households, both alike in dignity, and fair Verona, where we lay our scene from ancient grudge to new mutiny. Anyway, Romeo and Juliet. I was doing a play, and the director was talking to the guy who plays the priest in the play. The guy, right? Anyway, so the guy playing the priest goes, "Do you have any directorial notes for me? I have, like, how do I play this?" And I swear to you, the director goes, "Well," he talked with like an English, like he was from Brooklyn, but he would talk like this, He's like, right? But he goes, "Oh, I'm playing the priest. What? Do you have any notes for me?" And the director goes, "Well, you're a priest. You have a hat. Work with it." And that was like his direction. So I think that's sort of like the joke that came to my mind when she's like, "It's a vampire." So were they like, "Hey, write your own chapters. There's vampires. Work with it." What have brainstormed? Oh, we have brainstormed. See how my dyslexia? We look like what to me? Anyway, we have brainstormed for a few weeks, finally thinking we understand our intentions, etc., etc. We have a Discord group, so it's easy to ask questions, etc., etc. That's good. I'd really like to see some pages from that, just to see like how it kind of like, because again, talking about author voice, like to see the way authors present each chapter in their own voice. Are you offered carte blanche, and like, are you allowed to, like, say, write your chapter in first person, and they could write their chapter in second person, or third person? Second person: "You enter the house, your fangs sharp against your teeth. As you smile, they flick over the lips." That's second person. I think I've made my character very wistful, but the mischievousness mustache remains excellent. I shall do what I wish. What, kitty? The kitty cat's here. We've decided first person. Oh, that's good. So each chapter is, but still, like, to look at those chapters next to each other and to visually be able to compare the author voices. And when I say compare, I don't mean judge. I mean compare and like the nuances. That's a really interesting exercise in itself. Not only to write a book together with a group, but at the same time to be able to be like, hey, I'm trying to inject some humor. Oh yeah, you're British, right? Aren't you from England? Because humor, yeah. On my next pass, because humor, I believe that spelling is the English spelling. Hey, listen, sometimes you need a little humor here and there. You gotta make some. Do you trying to add like punish humor, or are you trying to? Yes, I am British. Or is it gonna be like, off the cuff humor where it's like natural, or is it like either one is good, by the way. I'm not saying either way. Anyway, by the way, I'm just having a conversation with Flowers about her books. But if anyone has any questions about writing, about how to develop your author voice, what author voice truly is, if you're wondering what's going on with the screen, feel free to ask questions. That was great. Thanks. I will watch through the recording as well. Hey, Jack, appreciate it. And yeah, I go over some things about Brandon's voice and like what makes his stand out, and then I kind of like work through it to sort of show how I approach it. And by the way, as an author, your job isn't necessarily to worry about that in the beginning. When you're doing your zero, your first, I'd even argue your second draft, you're not really concerned with your author's voice. But once you get to that third draft, you should be looking at your draft in the sense of, is this doing what I want? am I representing the thing I want? Am I showing this world the way I want to? Am I controlling it? And those questions really help define your author voice. Because as I was saying, I like to breathe inside the emotional experience of characters. I like to speed up the pace when there is action. And again, action doesn't necessarily have to be fighting and stuff like that, just that there's movement. So if they started moving across the field, or like it was the general speaking with their their lieutenants or whatever, and they're walking through their camp, that to me is action. So they're move I would keep the pace going. I wouldn't slow it down to be deep inside the characters. But anytime a character is experiencing something, for me, my voice slows down the narrative a little bit, so we can experience it through the characters. But what's nice is when you do that, especially if you do it correctly, um, it creates a push and pull. It allows the audience to be like, "Oh, we're moving, we're moving. Oh, okay, wait." And if you do it right, you won't even notice it. It'll just sort of kind of keep going. But also, again, this moment, so I write in a way where like it seems like there's clearly more words here. Like, what did I write? This is it's 97 verse, what is this, probably 62, 61. Oh, wow, I was close with that. 62, 61. All right, so this still reads fast, because that reading fast doesn't have anything to do with pacing. Pacing is the speed at which information is presented to the audience. But what makes something read fast is, to me, this slows down my reading, because the narrative has technically stopped, so I can just so something could be described. So one of the big notes I got from beta readers for my epic fantasy that I'm working on. I know, baby. My little kitten. Kitten, she's like 10. One of the really nice notes I got from the beta readers for the epic fantasy was my prologue, because it's the first prologue for the saga, is 8,100 words. And it's like, wow, that's long, but it is a short story. Like, I wrote it as a prologue, but it is a short story. And when all the readers first saw that, they're like, this is long. And before they read it, they were like, this is long, this is long. And the biggest note I got back was like, they wanted more. They were like, it does not read, like, it just you fly through it. And the reason that happens is because instead of saying the veteran wore a full beard cut short at the side, I add the description through the characters. So this is what helps for me, for my voice, to keep the narrative moving, is that the scripters or exposition or whatever, atmosphere, environment stuff, all that is moved through the character's experience, so I can do more than one thing at a time. I like my sentences feeling consistently filled with something more than just like, this line is here to tell you the room is 4x4, you know. So that's something to think about when you're writing, also, when it comes to not just in general. So there are other authors out there that, writing is a process, but at the same time, like, it's okay to write what you like, and that helps define your author voice. And Sanderson choosing to do this doesn't make him, oh, Santa, here's a point off. Like, it doesn't do that. This is, he wrote this, so it becomes great. If you wrote this, it's great. Whatever you write, because writing is hard, and to just get it out is a victory. You know what I'm saying? Like, some people are like, I have a story, and then you're like, really? And they're like, yeah. And 18 years later, they're like, I still have that story. Because writing is hard just to start. Like, for me to even write this, if I hadn't trained myself over 20 years, I would have been just staring at the white screen on, what do I write? What do I do? And I might discourage myself. So congratulate yourself just on writing anything, a sentence, a word, a passage, a page. Like, that's a powerful thing. And with that said, if you wrote it like this, you wrote it like this, or you wrote it somewhere in between, it's going to be great, because it's your unique voice, right? but there are other factors. Writing is subjective. Oh, I didn't like I don't like characters that have green hair. Why do all aliens have pink skin? Like things like that is stupid. Like, don't even listen to those people. But when it comes to quote unquote great writing, that has nothing to do with your author voice or your choices and your style. Great writing is a little bit more about the nuance of it, the substance, the fluidity of it. But this is again, if you haven't written 6 books yet, you're still a new author. So fail and fail miserably so you can learn and improve. And honestly, it probably takes more like 10 books to truly capture your voice and to truly capture your stride. And that's not bad. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I wrote a lot, and I look back at some of my older stuff, and like the core ideas of my voice are there, but they were bad books because I didn't understand structure and nuance and subtext. And as you're writing, you're going to find ways to discover that about yourself, and each book should be an exploration of that. Each book should be like, I'm learning more how to be immersive. Each book should be, oh, this book is where I really found my dialogue, and this book is how I really discovered description. Or and maybe by your 6th, 7th, or 8th book, you're like, I know how to manipulate it all into a nice fluid motion, and each sentence has strength. And I'm not pontificating. Like, things are actually happening. And that's when you start seeing it all come together. And so if you haven't written 6 books, all I'm saying is just keep going. Just keep writing. Finish the book. And don't worry if it's good or bad. I think whether people say your first book's going to be terrible, I don't believe it's going to be terrible because you wrote it. It's so hard to finish a book. So it's amazing. It might not be your voice. It might not be a book that was written through your absolute control of the craft yet, but it's your first book. You completed it. Something in you has said, I wanted to do something. I had this idea and I finished it. And you want to know something? And people might not tell you this, but you could go back to that first book after you've written 10 and rewrite it. If you don't believe it, this book right here, The Way of Kings, you can literally download the free book. It's free. It's Way of Kings Prime. It's the book he wrote before it became Way of Kings. And that's the thing. You're not beholden to the book you wrote 10 years ago. You can rewrite it, Can't stay, but we'll add this to my watch list later. Oh, that means a lot. Thank you so much. Thank you. I appreciate that. I really, I have no words. I'm an author and I have no words. No, but really, thank you. Thank you. Thank you for that. But yeah, all right. I guess that was my final thought. I didn't put up the banner, but I did final thought that. And yeah, so anyway, keep at it. By the way, thank you for everyone who's joined in. If you haven't subscribed, let me throw it. I feel like pushy with that. Subscribe, hit the like button. Do whatever you want. I don't want you to feel pressured, all right? But I'm just saying, I do love doing this, though. I do have fun. All right, so I think I'm gonna end it. But if you have a question, I'll give you 3 minutes to because there's a delay in what I say and what you guys hear on the screen. So if anyone has any extra questions, I'll give it 3 more minutes. If not, then we'll call it a day and we'll move on. What time is it anyway? 3 o'clock. It's not bad. We did pretty good today. We did pretty good. Yeah. As my father would say, hey, not bad, nephews. My dad called everybody nephews. Right. And one time they were like, but I'm your niece, or I'm your cousin, or I'm your whatever. And he goes, I don't want to remember people's names. But he was joking. My dad was he's like me. He just liked making people laugh, and he was a veteran of Vietnam and everything. So he just make jokes. But everyone loved him. And nephews at his wake, I wrote the speech. I had the pre-speak, and it starts off with "Good evening, nephews," and like the whole place laughed because that's just yeah, exactly. That's just what he does. And he always had this laugh, which I believe I have adopted, but he's like, hee, like it's like hee, you know, like when he's being mischievous or something like that. Like he'd walk past the kitchen table and just like take one of your chicken cutlets and then just walk away eating, going, you know. And you're like, all right, well, you know, that's Pop. He was a good guy. I miss the daddy. I miss the dad. Anyway. All right. We've got one more minute for if anyone can think of a question that you need. I'm here for you. This is for you. If not, we're gonna call it a day. Anyway, let's make it big. Bloop. All right. Guess that's it. Anything else? What do I got? Oh, wait, it's supposed to be written as questions. I should have popped that up. Maybe that would have inspired. Yeah, remember, do that thing if you want. Next Rewrite the Greats video, which will be, I believe 4 weeks from now, because I'm rotating my Saturday videos. Every week is a new video, but it's every Saturday, Sunday is a live video, by the way. 2:00 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Sundays, I'm writing a book in real time on the screen so you can see it. I'm walking through the process. I'm showing you how I outline. I'm showing you how I write my zero drafts, everything. It's going to be all the way to the end of the process, however long that takes. That video is every Sunday at 2 p.m. There's already, I think, 5 or 6 videos on it. And then every Saturday is sort of like a random video. I have 5 playlists that I'm building with this, which is ultimately Rewrite the Greats. There's a how-to series. There's a writing sprint, and then there's what is writing, and then there's advice. There'll be an advice one. I think the first advice video is next month. It's next month, March. Yeah. Anyway, but the next Write the Greats is Susan Collins. If you don't know who Susan Collins is, she is an author. Not only has she written The Hunger Games, but she also, I believe, is a television and film, right? She's written, what does she write? She wrote, what did she write? Oh, she adapted the movies, right? She definitely adapted the movies. Adapted the movies. Yeah. So anyway, she's known for writing. Anyway, all right. Okay, I guess that's it. To everybody, thank you. Absolutely appreciate it. Much love. It really does mean a lot to me that I get to spend my Saturdays and Sundays with you, and that we get to have some fun, talk, laugh. I love the laughing part. I love the conversation. I love the camaraderie. Please follow each other, subscribe, interact, community, rise each other up. Remember, we got to work, grow, and rise together. Thank you right back, flowers. Trust me. Thank you. Thank you. But with that, I'm Thomas J. Bellezza. This was The Right Mindset. And as always, keep developing the right mindset. I'll see you next time. Bye.